This video is about TTB, or thought-to behavior, which is proposed to explain what makes humans behave, apart from instinctive or reflexive behavior. In this video, we will briefly address the following: objects of thought, interpretation, attitude, behavior, behavioral outcomes, altering non-instinctive, non-reflexive human behavior. An object of thought, or OOT, is whatever comes to mind. Stated more formally, an object of thought is a mental awareness of internal or external stimuli, sensory, intellectually, emotionally. Human behavior can be initiated by either reflex, instinct, intuition, or cognition. Contrary to reflex, instinct always requires brain activity. Intuition is based on experience. Cognition is based on evidence and conscious reasoning. Since reflexes require little or no brain activity, behavior initiated by reflexes is not based on objects of thought. From this, we can take that whatever can come to your mind depends highly on what you have experienced so far and on your mental capability to process such information. Objects of thought can be interpreted differently from person to person, from time to time, and from situation to situation. In general, interpretation is either allocative or authoritative, respectively, to determine the function of the object of thought, or the consequences of observing, or not observing the determined function. One's personal interpretation of an object of thought is the first derivative of that OOT. Interpretations do not determine human behavior. For instance, someone may interpret a sign as an explicit ban to walk on a certain lawn, but decide to walk on it, nevertheless. Within TTB, the second derivative of each object of thought is one's attitude towards each personal interpretation of each object of thought. TTB distinguishes three main domains of attitude, namely, affection, facilitation, and assertion, where affection relates to likes and dislikes with regard to an OOT, as one has interpreted it. Facilitation relates to perceived advantages and disadvantages of the OOT, as one has interpreted it. Assertion refers to a confidence-building attitude towards one's interpretation of the object of thought, to minimize uncertainty. For example, affection: I do not like being banned from walking on the lawn. Facilitation: crossing the lawn saves me time and effort when going from A to B. Assertion: many people walk on this lawn, so I feel comfortable also doing so. Human behavior is determined by one's attitude towards each personal interpretation of each object of thought, or the extent to which an individual accepts the object of thought to be as he or she has interpreted it. How, and to what extent has the individual adopted the pertaining object of thought? One can have multiple attitudes towards one's interpretation of one object of thought. Those attitudes may reinforce, complement, or contradict one another. The most dominating attitude, at that instant, will determine human behavior most. Furthermore, an individual may deem multiple objects of thought relevant immediately prior to, or during acting. Consequentially, there will be multiple attitudes towards personal interpretations of all those OOTs competing with one another. The outcome of this competition will determine that individual's behavior. Circumstance and skills affect the outcome of human behavior. Evaluating outcomes of one's behavior may lead to adjustment of one's earlier interpretation of the pertaining object of thought. The attitude adopted towards the new interpretation may differ from the old attitude towards the previous interpretation. This different attitude may lead to different future behavior. Outcome evaluation may also directly lead to altering one's attitude towards one's interpretation, even when this interpretation remains the same. For instance, someone who, despite the ban, would step onto the lawn, immediately slips and falls on 2 dog droppings, making a spectacle of himself, might walk around the lawn in the future. Recapitulating. 1. All non-instinctive, non-reflexive human behavior is grounded on a set of objects of thought, OOT, which actors perceive relevant directly prior to, or during behavior. These objects of thought are the source initiators of non-instinctive, non-reflexive human behavior. 2. An individual's personal interpretations of those source initiators are first derivatives of the OOT. 3. An individual's personal attitudes towards his or her own interpretation of those source initiators are second derivatives of the pertaining OOT. 4. The outcome of mutual influence and competition of various relevant attitudes ultimately determines non-instinctive, non-reflexive human behavior. 5. Circumstance and an actor's aptitude determine the outcome of one's behavior. 6. Evaluation of behavioral outcome can inspire changes in future behavior, by serving as feedback to a. The composition of the set of objects of thought, when placed in a similar situation, b. One's interpretation of certain objects of thought. C. One's attitude towards one's interpretations. Based on the previous information, non-instinctive, non-reflexive human behavior can be altered by changing 1. the composition and/or dominance of objects of thought which an individual perceives relevant directly prior to or during acting. 2. An individual's personal interpretation of specific objects of thought. 3. An individual's personal attitude towards his or her own interpretation of specific objects of thought. 4. A combination of the above. The main line of thought behind cognitive behavior therapy, or CBT, is that one's behavior is a direct result of one's thinking and that undesired behavior results from distorted thinking. Field, Beeson and Jones, 2015. Conversely, TTB proposes that behavior results from what one thinks, objects of thought, how objects of thought are interpreted, what attitude one adopts towards one's own interpretations, which attitude dominates all other attitudes. Any distance between CBT and TTB might be bridged by a more universal approach of CBT, realizing and acknowledging the importance of both interpretation and attitudes for human behavior. This could give rise to a fourth CBT wave. ACBT, attitudinal cognitive behavior therapy.